Now we're going to set the preload on the spring, on the new springs. So as I said, this one's set up for a 110 kg rider. So here's the spring that came with the Race Tech kit and the Gold Emulator. So you put your your dampening rod in, you screw it all in, with your dampening spring and everything. That's all bolted in now. And then you put your adapter ring, drops down inside here, and then your emulator sits on top of that, and then your new spring sits on top of that. This is just to set the preload, because normally you would actually have a washer, a spacer that comes with the kit, that sits on top of here, then your spring, then the top washer, and then your preload spacer. Your preload spacer is that big piece of polythene, 40mm polythene pipe. So what I'm going to do, so basically I've installed all those. So what you do is you take you don't put those spacers in just now. You sit your spacer, your emulator, your spring, and then you put the two spacers on the top and make sure everything's sitting down there all nice and firm, and nothing's cocked over like a washer's cocked over or something stupid like that, sitting like that. And most importantly, make sure your emulator and your spacer are sitting down with the spring up and not cocked over like that. So it's got to be flush. So usually give the spring a couple of bounces and it will pop that into back into sequence. So that's how I'm going to assemble it so your two washers at the top, your spring, your emulator, and your spacer, that all sits down there. That's like your pack. Okay, so now what you do is so we need 25mm preload. So what that means is when the fork leg is completely extended out, so I'll come back a little bit so you can see it. So I'm going to slide this, because it's sitting down at the moment, hard down. So I'm going to slide it up, and then I'm actually going to sit the PVC. It's actually 25mm preload's what you need. Hey guys, I stuffed up on my videos and I couldn't actually do a double take on it. So to do the preload on your the preload spacer, you've got your fork, hold it in your vise by the caliper casting on the side with soft jaws. Don't clamp on the actual fork telescopic part itself, otherwise you'll damage that part. Now what you've got to do then, once you've got that connected, is slide the telescopic slider up, and then hold that with your other hand so it can't come down again. So don't pull hard and compress the dampening spring for the top out spring so it doesn't bang on the up spring. And then put the PVC pipe in, and then basically the cap distance from where it seats to the bottom of the thread is 20mm, and then you add 5mm onto that, which makes 25. So what you need is 5mm protrusion of the piece of PVC, and then make your mark, and then scribe your mark around and cut it off. So when you drop that piece in again, when it's cut off, you should see 5mm of actual protruding PVC pipe coming out the top of the telescopic leg with it fully extended out. Okay, and then what that means is when you go to press it on, it's pushing it down 5mm, and then you've got 20mm of thread. That's 25mm preload. So that's how you do it. So basically the measurement from that little lip there to the edge of this face is 20mm. So that means I need to allow, because we need 25mm protruding to it, I need to cut this piece off So I've got 5mm once this is actually fully extended. So it's got 5mm. There. So when I press this down, it's going to have 25mm of actual preload on it. So that's my bad. Anyway, it's hey, we're all here to learn something, and hopefully you won't make the same mistake. So I need to take a 25mm cut off this, and that should be us. So I've marked around that 20mm line, and I'm just going to double check it to make sure the mark's right. So I'm pretty much going to the bottom. Oh yeah. Pretty much going to be cutting off to the bottom of my mark there, not the top. Alright. Okay, so now we've got this left fork sorted out. We're just going to put a mark, lie them on the bench, and just put a mark. But we're not going to cut it. I'm not going to cut it because we just want to make sure that everything is sweet on the other one. Okay, so that's this one's for the right leg. So before I cut that off, I'm going to double check it before I commit to it, because I don't. It's the only pipe I've got left. Otherwise, I've got to buy some more. Okay, so now we're going to do the oil. Now the recommendations in the manual is 10 SAE 10. I'm using our high performance synthetic penrite oil because I completely evacuated all the old oil out of here, so there's not going to be any mixture of any cheap and nasty Harley oil. Yeah, unfortunately they put the cheaper stuff in there, you know, get the bike sold and down the road. But anyway, so now I've got to fill it with oil, so I'm just going to check the recommendations for that. Okay, so I've got the spring out. So what I'm going to do, because this fork is actually dropped down to its maximum length now, so I'm going to measure out, because I'm not sure how much oil it takes, but I've basically the level's got to be 165mm from the top of here to the top of the oil level. So I don't know. It's actually easier because I've just set my sliding square to 165, and now I can just sit it there like that. And then when you see the oil touch the bottom of that, and there, when the oil touches that, then that's how full it is. But what I'm going to do here, I've got one thing I actually want to talk about is be very careful when you're reading the instructions, because it's got a tuning guide and it's got the actual recommendations for the levels in the actual bike itself. So like for the Harley Davidson FXDF for the Fatbob, it tells me that I need to have 25mm preload, which is this puppy, and 165mm of oil level, but the actual tuning guide that's not specific about that bike just says like vintage and street bikes with forks of good quality, preload should be 60mm, and the oil height should be between 130 and 190. So I'm just going to follow what they recommend for this particular Harley Davidson model. So now we can put our spring in. Yep, there goes the spring. Now we can drop our second spacer in. And then put our actual spacer down. And now we can actually put the cap on. Put the cap on that. So I just basically put that on like so. I've got some rubber grease and put some rubber grease on the O-ring so it doesn't bite the O-ring on the way in. Or you can just get your oil, dip it in your finger and give it a bit of a quick wipe with the actual oil that's in it. Don't use any other oil other than what's actually you're putting in, otherwise it can contaminate. Now we want to hold this here and put pressure down and screw backwards until, because it's a very fine thread, and put downward force at the same time. Just keep going backwards. It's quite difficult to get in. Okay, now I'm going to have to take this out of the thing because it's going to blow the fork to bits. So I'm going to hold on to this with a rag because it's getting oily now. I'll move my container out of the way so I don't knock it over, and my oil container. So I normally do a joint action on this. I actually turn the, I can't do it here because I'll have to take it out of here. So you're holding the weight of it yourself. And now I'm going to have to do this off camera. It's too difficult to do together. So, right, that takes a pretty big bloody battle to get that done. So now it's done. I've only just nipped it up. So I'm going to put it in the bike and do it the triple tree and then tighten this up. And the height to the top of this nut above the triple tree is about 14 mil. So you've got to set that up as well.